Please welcome to the stage WWD's Executive Editor of Strategic Content, Arthur Zaczkiewicz, accompanied by Nicholas Kunz, co-founder of Nicholas K., and Torsten Hochstetter, Global Creative Director of PUMA.
Yes. Torsten, Nicholas, thank you so much for coming. I think there's so much happening in fashion right now, and I think folks are interested, if you're just starting out in your career or if you've been in and returned to school, that path that you take and the decisions that you make and what helps inform those decisions, I think is valuable. So it'd be great if you could just start, give us so here's the official question. So on your career path from Polimoda, right, to Fashion Week now, what were some of the key milestones? Like, not the 3 or 5 page CV, but just kind of the LinkedIn version of the highlights of what led you from Polimoda to kind of like where you are now.
And I think the highlight itself, obviously, it was at the beginning. It happened at the beginning with Polimoda, because I'm not from Italy. I'm from Germany, and being exposed to that sort of new and different culture and different language and the diversity and so forth, that was key, and it has kind of defined the path, at the very beginning. And certainly I started as a women's tailor. I did a tailoring apprenticeship and, realized, I want to dive deep into product itself. That's what I was passionate about.
So you knew this in school. You're like, this is it. This is the first step I'm going to take is...
That's right. That was a school situation, and then basically, I didn't realize that, you could sort of unite and fuse sports as well as design, and that kind of came later through the paths, when I first started out, to work for a casual brand.
Which brand was that? I'm sorry.
Pardon?
Which brand?
That was S. Oliver's, is a German casual brand, and then I ended up working for Adidas for 15 years, but not only in Germany where the headquarters were, but also in Japan, led the design team there, also in the United States, in Portland, Oregon. So I traveled the world with the idea of sports design, and then further down the line, obviously, for O'Neill as well as for PUMA. Those were the milestones, that I encountered for my career.
And Nicholas, so you had similar, both of you had to climb the hill at Polimoda?
Yeah, they have a new campus now in the city, but in our day, there was a very large hill that we had to climb every morning, which was beautiful. I mean, you arrived at this old villa, and I don't think you could ask any more from a school. It was really inspirational, and, like Torsten said, all the teachers were working in the industry for some of the largest labels. So for experience-wise, I don't think I could have had that anywhere else in the world. It was just such a beautiful experience. And graduating, I guess a milestone after graduating was getting into the company that I really, really wanted to work for, getting my first internship. I was like super motivated. This is the company I want to work for. Funny enough, there wasn't a design internship, so I was like, okay, I'll do anything it takes to get in the door. I'll do sales. So I worked on the sales team, and they're like, wow, you're really good. We want to keep you. Let's move you to design. So one thing led to another. I got a full-time job there. I worked for many years for Donna Karan. Another milestone was like ending my corporate world at Calvin Klein. And then, of course, launching the collection with my brother.
What year was that? I'm sorry.
That was in 2003.
Okay.
And that was a very humbling moment coming from a huge corporate culture to this very small kind of startup, traveling to all these boutiques on the road with a suitcase, showing the collection. That was, interestingly enough, a milestone, coming from all the glamour to reality, all the hard work. It was such an insightful, at that point in my life, I think that first year I learned more than I did in 9 years working corporate. Another milestone, I guess, after that was having our first fashion show in New York. And then later on evolving to Milan to do 2 shows in Milan. And now, recently, a month ago, opening our first retail store on Broome Street in Soho.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So both of you have similar but kind of different kind of paths. How did each, being at O'Neill or Adidas, how did that inform where you are now? What did you take with you? What luggage did you carry?
No, I think I was always passionate about sports myself. I play soccer, I play tennis, I love kite surfing, and fitness and everything, and on all of that, I realized, you could fuse that together with my other passion, which was design, and that really, formed sort of my personality very strongly in the same time, and has served well and helped for my career.
So how, for example?
Pardon?
How, for example? Like, can you give me like an example?
Yeah, I think the key to design sportswear really is that it all derives from the function. You have to put yourself into the shoes of an athlete. You got to think about how can you help the athlete perform better. And there's aspects such as the pattern, the certain seamings, the fabric that you use. Obviously the dynamic that you want to express with the sports design regarding color, regarding the actual design and what you portray. And that's something that you always have to have, in the back of your mind, and then make it relevant. That's another very, very important thing. And then I felt, that's sports design, but, make that aesthetically interesting, and look at other fields that influence sports design, such as architecture or automotive design or nature itself, all of that, you take into consideration when you're designing.
And you played sports too.
I did.
And, was it tennis?
Tennis. I grew up playing competitive tennis, 4 hours a day on the court.
Serious, it's a commitment.
Yeah, serious. And it was fun and I loved it. And I was pretty good at it. But, my heart was in fashion and design. So,
So when you were in school, what was the moment you were like, you saw kind of a way to go? Like, this is the road I want to take. Like, what was that?
In school? Well, I think in school I just had like the passion to be a fashion designer ever since I was young, since I was like 6, I think, or 5, really young. And so, but in school I didn't know how, after I graduated, in which direction I would go in. I didn't necessarily say I need to have my own collection. There was all these amazing designers at the moment that I wanted to work for. I mean, that was my dream. I want to work for one of the biggest houses in New York. So it was like step by step. And then after working for them, a lot of designers in New York, I thought, well, wow, I want to do something a little more creative, because they were also already at that scale that it was a little more commercial. It was very merchandised. It wasn't like a smaller company that could be really creative. And so I just wanted to do something a little more creative, but I loved both kind of worlds.
And did your experience in sales, for example, that helped you when you launched your business, obviously?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's important for, kids in school to realize, like, first of all, if that's what you have to do to get in the door, to be where you're at, yeah, you should do it. But secondly, it should be a learning experience, right? All those factors that contribute to design, it starts from sales, what people are buying. And nowadays it's direct to consumer. So you should be savvy at like what colors are popular. If you have a complicated garment on the hanger, how are you going to sell that? Hanger appeal, or, just all the different aspects that go along with like selling the clothes.
How is, let's talk about maybe when you started compared to now, how has technology kind of changed and helped inform, what you do in your
right. I believe that nowadays young designers have to take so many more things into consideration. It's not only product, but it's also, as you've mentioned, is about diving deep into the consumer, how to communicate it, how to build the brand, how to stay connected, and obviously technology as well. How that plays a role. I think in our days when we first started out, we were very, very focused on the product, but that doesn't go away. I think it's extremely important that, when you're designing, that the product and the design really remains at the heart and soul of the brand and of your ideas or of your collection. Yeah, because you can put so many fluff out around it. If the product's not right, you're not selling it. And that's what we have to take into consideration also very much in the corporate world, in the corporate sports world. It has to start with a product. That has to be right.
So you take passion, you have good product and good design, and then you have to know the end user while also in that product development part, you have to know that end user, the athlete, right? So it all kind of comes together, right? Is that what you're saying, basically?
That's right. Yes, that's right. You have to, you got to create something relevant. And I was talking about the athletes before, but it's also the consumer. You got to understand what is your realistic distribution channel, what is the price points you're selling within. What are the athletes' needs? All these things you have to take into consideration when you start drawing, when you start building items, building garments, building shoes, designing shoes, because further down the line, it's very important that it's makeable, it's doable, it's sellable.
What shoes are you wearing today? What do you do?
Oh, it's the PUMA Thunder, and that's basically a design that kind of fuses sports and style. Where we're taking inspiration from running, but obviously we've interpreted it in a different way.
So would you agree? I mean, what's the combination for you as
of technology and fashion?
Technology.
I got a little lost in his thoughts
Yeah.
for a second. I was mesmerized. I think it was really different. When we started the line, there was not really e-commerce. People said, you can't sell luxury online. And I think for students now, like once they graduate and if they have their own line, it's really interesting because there is that direct-to-consumer path. And when I started, I had to rely solely on wholesale. And if a buyer came in and they were just not feeling it one season, that was it. And nowadays, I can reach the audience directly. And we've built our e-commerce it's the largest, business of our brand. So I think it's a really interesting time. But again, I think with technology, there's just a lot of noise out there. So you have to be able to filter through the noise, create really good messaging, because once you put it out there, you can't take it back. It's like, oops, sorry, didn't mean to push that, but it spread like viral. There's a lot of interesting things to think about, and there's a lot of opportunity. It's just, I think you have to be really well curated. So
with direct-to-consumer, you get to control kind of the destiny of your brand, right?
Exactly.
But you have retail too, right? So you're collecting data online. It's just
exactly.
Not direct-to-consumer. You have that quantitative and qualitative
right.
In-store experience. Does one inform the other to...
It's interesting. I mean, we've only been open full retail for 1 month, but you do see a very big difference on what's sold online and what's sold in the store. I think it is really important data, and sometimes the customers are different, but it's just I just started, so we'll see. Hopefully we'll have a lot more time to think about it. And
you have access to lots of data, right? How does that play into product design? And
it's very important because it's reflected also in the briefing, because obviously we're working very closely together, in a cross-functional team where not only designers are there, but we're working together with product line managers. We're working with development. We need to understand the value chain also in regards to who is the vendor, who is really producing the product, what are the abilities of the vendor, what are new technologies, what are the innovations that have to come in, that play a role, and then put it into the landscape of the entire collection structure in a realistic way. And all of those things from a design leadership perspective you have to take into consideration. And then, as you were saying earlier, if the product's not right, you got a problem. So that is always, you try to predict as much as possible with the data, but at the same time, you also have to be courageous to do new things. To be intuitive about it, and research a lot in the beginning. Look at the brief, look at the price points, look at the consumer, and then put it back into the drawer. Let it sink in. And then do your interpretation, your creative interpretation, and how the future could look like. And there, you have to be courageous, and you have to bring a lot of your own personality, your own ideas, and go back to the point is where you kind of decided for yourself, that's the moment, I decide to take that career path. I'm passionate about this. And that's what you have to bring in when you design.
So it's a little bit of risk-taking And how do you do that? Do you hold hands with somebody? You jump together?
You cross your fingers.
You cross your fingers, right? So
it's a collaborative approach. It's a very, very collaborative approach.
What were some of as you were kind of on both of your career paths, what were some of the early challenges? Can you share any of those sleepless nights or the bill that came that you couldn't pay? What were some of the realities, the tangible?
I think for me, one very large kind of problem coming from the corporate world was production. It's like you could be the most genius designer, and then if you can't execute the product, you have a problem. And, when you're working for a large company, it's like you have the production person, you have the fabric person, you have all the little different departments. When you're doing your own launch, you have to work with all those moving components, and then one hiccup through the chain, and it's a huge and costly problem. So I think that's a really big one. And secondly, nowadays is filtering through the noise. We have been around for a while, so fortunately enough, we do pop up on the web, and we do have a lot of press in the media already. But for newcomers, it's like you really get lost in the noise. So trying to find your voice is really important.
So how do you do that? How do you find your voice?
I think
Scream loud, or
you have to have, first of all, you have to have great products. And it's not necessarily like you have to have 100 styles. Nowadays you can have 5 great, singular products. It doesn't need to be a full-blown collection. And you need to focus on it and make sure from start to finish, from design to conception, it's, perfect. And then take it from there.
That's true.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, because I think finding your voice, working for a big corporation such as PUMA, it's really important to understand what your brand stands for. What are the brand values, and then obviously what are the design principles that we want to design around? What are the seasonal creative directions? What are those attributes that give the brand a personality? So my suggestion also to young talent really is, if you know that about yourself, your own personality and what your passion is, not only from a product design perspective, but really also from an ethical perspective, how you want to work together with people and what kind of culture you would want to join, how important diversity is for you. That's something that, is really important, because that defines the brand personality as well, that you want to contribute to and be identifying with, and in my case, doing sports and being an athlete as well is really easy, to work for a brand as a creative, like PUMA as a creative.
And then those attributes are reflected in the product as well as the brand, right?
Absolutely. But as a creative director, global creative director for PUMA, you have to define those attributes. You have to say, we want to keep it simple. We want to make it fast. We want to make design that's powerful. Those are things that have to be defined, because there's 100 designers that work for PUMA on a global level, and there is there's movement, there's change, and each and every one that designs a product with a beautiful cat as the branding, needs to understand what the brand stands for.
So with your brand, it's has the attributes changed? Has it been consistent over time? Have you reacted and shifted?
So I think starting out when I was younger, it's I was pretty focused. Like, this is our brand direction. And I think I was a little more naive. So, I work with multi-brand showrooms. I worked with all these different people in the industry. And it was interesting because at the time, our brand is very tomboy, is very progressive, it was very streetwear. It was nothing that was like on the market then. The showrooms would tell me, you have to add a little more girliness. And I was like, but girliness, feminine. You have to be more feminine. Okay. And I'm like, but I'm not very feminine. And I don't even understand. I don't want to put a ruffle. I do not want florals. It's just, and you try to incorporate it because they're like, well, you're going to have better sales. You're going to do this, you're going to do this. And it's actually the opposite of what you should actually do. going through the noise, like filtering through the noise, you have to be focused. And focused means how are you going to set your brand apart, right? What is so special about you that no one else is doing? And so I think we were getting the opposite advice for like immediate gratification, I guess, than what we should have really been doing. We should have been like, oh, you told me to do this, I should actually be even more tomboy. I should really stick to my guns. I should develop it that way. And look, now streetwear is luxury, right? Everyone's doing streetwear. So, just because you don't fit in the mold, like at that moment in time, doesn't mean that time is not coming. It will, and you just have to stick to your guns.
Do you agree? Counterintuitive, is that a good approach?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
I think, if it's a big brand or a small brand, you said that before. You said, well, sometimes, you can't take back the send when you hit send, too. So technology and social media, when you have brand attributes that are out in the market, it's double-edged sword, right? Mm-hmm. Social media could backfire or, kind of change the attributes. So you have to be constantly mending and tending to your brand, correct?
Right.
Yes, absolutely. No, you have to understand, who you're working for. For a sports brand that has such great history, going into the archive, and looking at the old lasts from the soccer stars of the time or the tennis stars, and seeing those shoes in front of you, touching them, and really, knowing that they have been on the court at Wimbledon or at the running track at the Olympic Games, and that is so inspirational itself, because you look back at the visuals of that time and the style and all of that, you kind of you take in and you absorb and you research, and then you make sure you are able to kind of transport that into the future, take it as an inspiration, and then do something that's still right for the brand DNA.
Speaking of inspiration, did you guys have mentors as you were kind of navigating your career path, and who were they and how did they affect you?
Well, I was really fortunate to have, great mentors early on in my career working corporate, who were my managers, and one being John Barbados, one being Donna Karen.
Small names. Yeah,
you wouldn't know them. But, it's not for what you actually, think, but they did teach me to be hardworking and, very disciplined, but the big takeaway from, those days was, both of them, if there wasn't something that went like they planned or expected, they wouldn't throw tantrums or, get all excited and dramatic. They were always pretty cool, calm, and collected. And they were very humble and grounded, which I think is really important in our industry. And so when I was younger, I really felt like that was cool, and that's like who I wanted to be, and I feel like that's something really important. Like kids should, once they graduate and they go into the work environment, is always to kind of be humble and treat people with respect, and you'll get it right back,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things you said, and I was thinking, that's my parents. Yeah, they were my mentors, luckily, and I think I was so inspired, by my peers and working together, and already at Polimoda times I, worked together with a Greek guy, an Italian a girl, and me as a German. You were in an international diverse group, and it kind of, that in itself formed me a lot, and I was very inspired by peers, and also now, in my role now, I'm extremely inspired by young designers, by designers that I collaborate very, very closely together with, and all the way through my careers, it's more my peers that became my inspirational sources.
You mentioned, you said a kind of a work ethic. You mentioned that you learned a little bit about that. What is your work ethic like?
Well,
do you get up at like 5 o'clock and go to sleep?
Well, I'm like, I'm sitting there in bed, like thinking of all the things I have to do. So I'm like mentally working probably at 5 a.m. But I'm definitely, work hard, kind of play hard, but less playing hard now that I'm getting older. It's like longer to recover. But I don't know, my brother, who is my business partner, calls me neurotic, but I just think of it as very hyper-organized and detail-orientated.
And what's your
I just want to be the best in doing what I love.
That's a simple. Okay. Done.
Yes, and I think it's important, to be yourself, and to remain yourself all the way through. And
okay, so
if you know that,
so I'll challenge you on that. You're talking about authenticity, right? So like
Right.
you're the best authentic self that you can be. That takes a lot of work. Does it get exhausting? Like to be the best that you can be of yourself.
That's right. But I think if you know who you are, and how you work, and what your passions are, then the rest comes from itself, by itself. Because it's not an effort, to stay at long meetings, because you know what you want to achieve and where you want to go towards.
How would you describe like kind of the work environment at PUMA?
It's extremely diverse. Alone in Herzogenaurach, which is the headquarter in Germany, the global headquarter of the brand.
That's in southern Germany, right?
In southern Germany, that's right. It's about an hour from Munich. And we are about 50 nationalities. So basically, at lunchtime, you can pick your language, depending which table you want to join. But that's the salt in the soup, because...
Is there a 2 beer at lunch allowance, or...
Pardon?
Can you have 2 beers at lunch? Is that allowed or no? No beer.
Absolutely, it's a very open
Really?
environment.
Okay, cool.
It's and I think that's the interesting thing, for a global sports brand to work in a very diverse environment, because people with different backgrounds and different education bring different solutions and different approaches, and you always learn. I learn every day.
And what about risk taking? Like, do you, as a company, do you try new things? Do you, fail fast, as we say in the industry?
Right. Yeah, you have to take risks, and obviously, in some occasions, you got to look back into what is a certain track record of a certain silhouette or a certain color, or certain models that really sold well. You got to respect that when you create the new collection, but at the same time, you always have to leave room, within the offer, within the collection that brings newness and that, is also doing unexpected things creatively.
So you maintain the heritage part of the brand while trying new things.
That's right. But also with the new designs, you're maintaining the heritage by understanding the DNA, understanding the design principles, understanding who you're designing for.
And would you describe, how many people work for you, can I ask?
About 5.
About 5. So very entrepreneurial, nimble.
Yes, very agile.
What's a typical day like at work?
Oh, well,
fights with
everybody
your brother?
wears a lot of different hats, yeah, with fights with yeah, it's a very family-orientated business, We're able to make, quick decisions, which is nice, but, we're all family, so we don't always agree, and then that becomes like Christmas, It's like, it can be chaotic at times, but, some of the greatest Italian houses are all family, and, look where they all came, and they're very successful. So I think it's about that balance, and, working with family, it's like, they're never going to leave you or, do something against you, or so it's nice.
So, I think if you look at the market now, you said that the typical consumer is bombarded with about 10,000 marketing messages a day, 10,000. And both of you talked about cutting through the noise. Well, who out there besides your own brands is doing it well? Which brands, even outside of fashion, is like nailing it and succeeding in your mind? Who do you admire as a brand too?
I wasn't prepared for this.
Besides
Samsung. Well, I think for me, Rick Owens is, amazing, only because he was, a trailblazer from the beginning, He was always doing things differently. He wasn't, mainstream marketing or communications. It was just very unusual compared to what everybody else was doing, even his theatrical shows. But then again, there's people like Stella McCartney that I think are amazing, because of our sustainability efforts. You know, we're really big into sustainability, and when you're her size and, you know, creating, like, you know, educating people and starting a movement is really important. And I think it's inevitable that every brand will have to be sustainable in the future, but that is something really to admire.
If you could go back in time to your 20-year-old self, so you're 20 years old, you're going back to visit yourself, and you have like 5 minutes to kind of give yourself advice, what would you say?
Right. I would definitely say, you know, remain yourself, you know, believe in your passion, believe in what you do, and then, you know, try to find your path that is according to what your inner strength is, you know. And I think you have to sort of find yourself first. And if you know what that is, then find your match, you know, find your match in terms of, you know, either deciding, you know, to make your own brand or deciding to you know, join the sports corporate environment, you know, where you can express yourself in a totally different way.
I would say to relax a little. You know, when I was younger, I was very, very motivated. You know, I wanted to go far, fast, and I feel like I think it's really important to don't let life rush you by, and just, you know, it's about the moment that you're in, and you know, fashion is a business, but don't take it so seriously. And secondly, to really stay focused, like I said again, about your vision. Don't let people tell you you have to be something else. I mean, there's advice that they might be like, oh, can you tweak this to make it a little more commercial? And that's really hard to sell, but they're not telling you to change your voice. I think it's important that you just, if you have vision, you need to really believe in yourself. Persistence prevails. You just have to want it so badly that, you know, no one's going to knock you down, and you'll get there. It just might take time.
Thank you. We're going to turn. We have time for questions, right? So enough of me asking some stuff. Can we hear from you guys?
Hi. One thing that I want to tell, first of all, you guys are great, and your passion is just outstanding. But one thing that I want to tell the young people coming up in any industry or any segment of a major industry is that it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. We don't teach our children how to fail, because if we did, then they would not feel bad about things and give up on your dreams. So there you go.
We can hear you.
Go ahead. No, you can go first. Hi, my name is PC. I'm with a digital startup called Trendalytics. You guys talked about a prevailing theme that we see at this year's Fashion Week, which is all about how consumer data and digital is changing how fashion brands design and bring a product to market. We've heard mass customization and consumer-led design, 3D virtualization, you guys in automation robotics. If this is a new normal in the fashion industry, what does emerging talent need to do in order to be competitive?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question.
Yeah, that's good.
Can we get back to you tomorrow?
Yeah, we need to think about this.
Depends how much time we have. Yeah, depends how much time we have.
Well, I think tech is changing so rapidly. You know, I think it's important to be savvy, you know, but there's different, like, kind of tech startups every week. You have to be able to, I guess, figure out, the golden question is which one is going to, like, succeed. But yeah, I think it's a complicated question, and I think if anyone knew the answer, like, we'd all be
millionaires.
Billionaires.
Billionaires.
Right. No, I can confirm that. You know, yeah. I think, you know, in sports design, where innovation is extremely important, you know, it's anything, you know, that is coming through and cutting through, like 3D printing, for example, you know, that we particularly also use for toolings, or, you know, making prototypes, you know, new technologies that are coming in when it comes to footwear design. That's something that, you know, as savvy as you can get about it, you know, the more value you can add.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to, educate yourself. It's like us when we started on our mission to sustainability, whether the stuff was to market or not to market, we went to all the seminars and the summits just to learn about what was coming to market and what those new technologies are, but not necessarily we were going to use them. But it's just, information that's really useful.
So there's great information in WWD on technology. Who had a question? Okay.
I worked as a textile designer in the industry for 10 years. I started in San Francisco with a woman who was hand-painted gouache before digital took over, et cetera. Went to Target for 2 years, which was an incredible learning experience. Like, I learned everything that one would need to know about the market, and then came to New York and was basically treated like trash, like the way people pay you and like want you to be a digital monkey. I had to like back away, become an artist on my own, but I do a lot of hand painting. Anyway, my question is mainly for PUMA and what your efforts are in the sustainability. Like, I know Adidas is pulling, the parlay shoes. I've got some hand painted textile Pumas that I happen to wear today. I didn't even know you guys were going to be here, but yeah, that's my main question: is what are you doing for the future?
Right. It's a very, very important point for us, and we're trying to, in the entire value chain, we're trying to figure out what are possibilities, around sustainability, and obviously that starts when it, starts with the raw material selection, obviously, and we totally have that on the radar, where the materials are coming from. Also, when it comes to the human factor, what are the vendors and the manufacturers that we're working together with? That we eliminate entirely child labor, that we would not work with vendors that have that. And so there's a lot of points that, on all levels, the company really explores and try to sort of, sink the teeth in to make sure that we are sustainable, in the entire value chain. And
you're experiencing that too. You're doing...
Yeah, I mean, our whole business is really centered around sustainability now. Just, I always love nature, and I'm a huge supporter of preservation and conservation. And so I think, anything, I mean, we're obviously very small to PUMA, but we have a voice. So, marketing-wise, I think it's really important to, educate people, and I think having the store is great because we can tell consumers, this is linen, why is linen sustainable, this is Tencel, this is, organic GOTS cotton, and make them care, because, a lot of people just in fashion, they don't care, but it's not really that they don't care, it's just that they're not educated. So I think it's just, if we all could educate each other and help us move into the sustainable world, I think everybody would be on board. And who cares if it costs $1 or $2 more? I want something non-toxic against my skin rather than to have all these awful chemicals. And so I think really people should just educate themselves and help educate others and kind of just spread the word on sustainability. And there's really a lot of different factors that come into play. It's like animal welfare, down to the fiber, down to the processing, down to the factories, and where you're shipping it from, and the trim. So there's a lot of different variables that go into one garment or one shoe. So it's not to say that someone has to be 100% sustainable, but I feel like people should make the steps in the right direction.
But did you have another question, or you were okay?
No, I don't know if you guys know that Australia is top of the market in cotton. They did the whole cotton survey. They did a cotton panel in Australia. Now, the most water safe or least water wasting cotton is being made in Australia. So any company I work with in the future, I'm going to insist that we at least get to that standard, or we'll just make it in Australia and find out ways to ship the cotton wherever it needs to be manufactured. I'm pretty adamant about the rules that any company that I work for in the future is going to have to be up to my standards. I'm from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I came out here and it's just I live in Brooklyn, and there's no trash cans anywhere. It's filthy and just disgusting. It's really a sad, sad city.
We have another question here.
Hi, my name's Jennifer. I just had a question about how any advice you would give to new designers on how to break into the fashion industry.
How to break into? That's a question. How to break into? I think we talked about the fact that knowing yourself is super important, and what your expectations are. But then I think it's super important to start somewhere. I mean, even if it's something smaller, but start somewhere. Do your first job. Try to build a track record, really, of experience. Even if it's an internship, even if it's a smaller company, it's okay. You got to start somewhere and move your way up. I think that is the advice that I would give as well. For example, I did a fake fur collection with a company in Poland when I first started out. Those are my first ideas coming out of Polimoda, and you got to start somewhere. I wasn't very selective at the beginning regarding what kind of product I needed to design, but I wanted to start, and that sort of educated me or prepared me for the next step.
Well, I think you just got to do it. You got to figure out what your passion is, number one, because without passion, you're not going to go anywhere. It's the driving force behind success. So what is it about the fashion industry that you love so much? And then secondly, jump in it. Just, dive right in and don't follow what other people are doing. Don't think there's a specific winning formula for success. You see a blogger and then you want to be that blogger or something. No, I think, again, you have to just figure out who you are and create your own world.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Arthur.
Thanks a lot.